Hello, thanks for watching Social Media for Business. I'm John Payne and I'm here to take you through how you can use social media a bit more effectively for your business. Part of my job is debunking people's bullshit in this industry, so I'm grateful to have this chance to be able to do that to such a big audience. Why should you listen to me? Well, I've made loads of mistakes in social media and search. I have been running online businesses for about 16 years. I've been running agencies for 14 years, and I've spent the last 7 years specialising in search and social media marketing. So I've been there, I've done it. I think I can help you not make the same mistakes I've made, and I think I can shortcut some of your learning. Why should you watch this? Well, maybe you just prefer not to use social media for your business, but you're worried you'll lose out to a savvy competitor. Or maybe you've got someone who is doing it for your business and you want actionable tips to be able to do it better yourself or get your team to do it better. Or maybe you've set up a couple of accounts, you've dabbled, and like lots of people, you've stopped and given up because you can't really figure out how to do it. Well, hopefully we can help you get a bit better. The first thing to note is, while it often looks like it, social media does not equal grumpy cat all over the place. Fantastic as she is, social media is about figuring out what's a good message to hit your client with or your potential customer, and do that in a timely fashion, and also more than simply talking one-to-one. The viral nature of these networks allows you to use a message that will spread more easily. So, thinking about social media, what platforms should you begin to use? Me and my team often talk about using social media that will give you double bubble. So, what can you do that will not only give you reach to your potential clients, but will also give you some search rankings potentially, and maybe even give some key indicators to Google that you're a trustworthy organisation? Well, as you can see from this screenshot, Noisy Little Monkey, which is the agency I run, we've got double bubble from our search and social media. You can see that throughout the page, if you've searched for us, there are no adverts for any competitor agencies. You can see that there's our Twitter feed, and if you could see further down, there'd be Facebook and LinkedIn and all of that kind of thing. And over on the right-hand side, you can see that there is our latest blog post from Google+. So where we've tied that stuff all together, it means that Google knows that when you search for, in this case, Noisy Little Monkey, you don't need to see lots of other agencies who might do what we do. Actually, you're looking for information about that particular brand. And you can do this with your brand with an effective use of the top tier social media, which we'll come on to in a second, and making sure you tie that together with Google+. So, see a couple of local brands to the southwest that do this really well. Clark Wilmot is solicitors in Bristol. They share a lot of their blogs on Google+, and therefore when people search for Clark Wilmot, you see their blogs listed down the right-hand side of the Google page. And Yo Valley have done lots of really cool videos. You probably remember the tractor that hopped and the rapping guys selling yogurt. Well, these guys put those videos on YouTube, they have shared them on Facebook and on Twitter, and when you search for Yo Valley, you don't see lots of other organic food products coming up, you see lots of Yo Valley content coming up on Google. And that's what we mean by double bubble. If you share it effectively, and if you get other people to share that message and get that message spread, you'll see that when people search for you on Google, they're also seeing that social activity. So, moving on to actually jumping onto the platforms, what are the top platforms? Well, we see them as Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, and Google+. And if you're on your own, or if there's a small team of you, we would suggest using at least Facebook, Pinterest, or Twitter, one of those plus Google+. And we'll come to what's best for what sort of business shortly. But the reason we say that is the Google Plus gives you the double bubble, and you can kind of recycle the content you're using on other channels over there on Google Plus. You might have people in the business who are interested in doing more stuff on Instagram, on Vine, which is the video sharing channel, and LinkedIn. These are really good, but if you're just entering the arena or you really want some actionable tips, we're going to stick with the top tier channels. The secondary platforms, you can discover lots more about them online. The reason we're probably not touching on LinkedIn, because everybody asks, John, why aren't you talking about LinkedIn when we're doing these kinds of things? is because that's much more a person to person. I know you and I've met you at an event. I maybe connect to you and we have a relationship on LinkedIn, and maybe I introduce you to some of my connections on LinkedIn. And that's not really very easy to scale. So we're not going to be talking about LinkedIn on this bit. So, thinking about the platforms, before you decide on which platforms to go, we need to get the right image for your brand. So the image for the brand, really, you've got to kind of pull yourself out of what it is you do day to day in the business and think, who are my audience? What do they want? And your audience isn't necessarily your customers and potential customers. It's influencers such as journalists in the local press, trade press journalists, bloggers in your industry, lots of people like that. And they're your audience. So what's the sort of content they want? That's where we always start. What are your audience after? And then while you're thinking about your audience, have a bit more of a think and think, well, what do I want from social media? Your boss, your managing director wants sales. We'll come on to how you can measure how effective that is later, but more often than not, it's more in the PR end of marketing where we're looking at building a community around your brand. We're looking at generating some brand awareness and some desire for your products and services, and we're looking at potentially doing a bit more customer service. So the stuff you traditionally do on the phone or via email, actually, is it better to do that in the public domain where people can see what a fantastic service you're giving to your clients? While you're thinking about what it is the business needs and what it is your boss wants, perhaps, let's think in a bit more detail about what it is your audience want. And what we do when we're working with a client is work up some pretend persona of people within that audience. So what you're looking at here is an example of some representative audience members of a client that we have who runs an events company. And so Joanna is a chief executive. She's 48 years old. We know she reads broadsheet newspapers and is interested in the news first thing in the morning. Linda is a marketing assistant and a PA, just in any company, but the sort of person who needs to pick up the phone and talk to an events company from time to time. And Dan is someone that we've made up that is representative of someone else in their audience he's actually a bit more active on social media. He's a managing director and he also needs to run events. So these are three personas that we've, if you like, created for the client so that we can say, right, we're writing a blog post that's aimed primarily at Dan, but is also engaging for Joanna and Linda. And once we've written that blog post, when we tweet it, we'll make sure that we tweet it 3 times because we can do that kind of stuff over the period of 8 to 10 hours because there's lots of stuff happening on Twitter. So the message will get pushed down and you've got a blog post that you might have written that's kind of aimed at Dan, aimed at the managing director level, but you can tweet it with a headline that will attract the click from Linda or another headline that will attract the click from Joanna. So that's the way we try and use personas to make sure that we're writing in a way that's personal and engaging to real human beings. Once we've figured that out and agreed that with the team, we try and get planning. And here you can see a couple of planning tools that are free and easy to use. One is they're both from a company called HubSpot who do really, really useful social media tools. And in this case, on the right-hand side, we're looking at how they recommend you set out your editorial calendar for blogs. And I'm in the offices of the Bristol Post and they know all about editorial calendars, but you and I need to get to know about that if we're going to produce blogs for our clients, because social media works really well with meat on the bone. There's no point in tweeting and Facebooking and all of that kind of stuff unless you can drive people to your website to find out more about what it is you're talking about and perhaps buy your products and services. So looking at blogs, we've got on the right-hand side, we've got the topic and the title of the blog, the content and the details for the blog, the sort of keywords, the trigger words that you want this to trigger in your client's mind, and then the target persona. So you can say, well, we're writing this for Dan or we're writing this for Joanna, and therefore it means we're writing it in a particular style. And you can plan this months and months and months in advance, and that's a really good idea to do. I know it sounds like a bit of a nightmare, but it will save you lots of time as you're moving forward. And again, if you take an example from people who know how to do this sort of stuff and are doing it all the time, you can download the editorial calendar of most publications and you can see that they're planning this stuff months, if not years in advance, so that they can sell advertising and all of that kind of stuff. You need to be acting like your own personal editor and creating this editorial calendar. And then on the left-hand side, you can see that there's actually the same sort of thing, but you can download one that allows you to schedule your tweets. So you can schedule lots and lots of tweets throughout the day, throughout the week, and you don't have to sit at your desk and go, what am I going to tweet about? You're just ready to go. So those are two tools that we use, lots of other social media agencies use to make sure that they're helping their clients have an editorial calendar that they can stick to. The way that we begin to populate it is obviously we look at what's going on in your industry from month to month, from week to week. When are the big events? When are the big exhibitions? When should we be talking about stuff? And then if you look at this image, it's from a tool called Hootsuite, and it's their Own the Moment calendar, which allows you to look at various other events. Speak Like a Pirate Day, the Super Bowl, World Cake Day, all of those things, they put them into a diary so you can be prepared to tweet about, or Facebook or Google Plus or pin stuff ready for those sorts of world events or local events. Really useful for helping you bring some colour and flavour to your social media. Finally, what you've got to be thinking about is, how am I going to handle negativity? To be fair, it's very, very rare. We rarely see much bad stuff coming back at brands, but be prepared like a Boy Scout. Think about, what is it that people could say? Could they say that you were closed on a particular day, that they felt they had poor service and all of that kind of stuff? Have some sort of standard complaints that you may have received in the past and think, right, well, how would we work with those on social media? Does it require an apology? Does it require us to engage? Or should we ignore it? Often it's best to engage and fix it if you can, not try and fix people's opinions. If they think your stuff's too expensive, then they'll go and buy it somewhere cheaper. You're not going to change their mind on Twitter. But if they say you're closed on Tuesdays, when in fact your business is open on Tuesdays, you can fix that by tweeting a reply that says, we're open on Tuesdays. In fact, we're open Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and open late night on Saturdays. The probably most important thing is to think, don't feed the trolls. So if someone is really, really brutally unpleasant about your brand, or seems to be dropping nasty comments on your Facebook page or anywhere like that, if they're clearly trying to bait you, that's what we call a troll, and you don't feed the trolls. Feeding the trolls means you give them feedback and you talk back to them. Don't block them and move on. They'll go and find someone else and they'll pretty much move out of your timeline quite quickly. Once you've thought about all of that, you've got to think, what does that mean for my writing style? Because when you're talking to these people, the persona you've created, and thinking about what it is they engage with, you don't want to be using text speak with someone who's 48 and the director of a multinational company. You need to be using language that they understand and terminology that they'll engage with. What we've got here is some questions that we use as the very beginnings of our style guide with clients. So what does your business want from social media? Who are the audience? What do the audience want? Who do they trust? What do they read online? What does that mean for your writing style? And who's empowered to deal with stuff? And I would implore you, if you're going to really have a proper crack at social media, spend half a day with your managing director, your finance director, your marketing manager or director, and someone who actually does the sales in the organisation, and probably someone who's on first pickup on the phone. Get them in a room for half a day, and the investment that you make in understanding how people interact with your company, what they already think of your brand, and where success lies and what it looks like for your business will help you or the agency you outsource this sort of stuff to be much more successful, much more quickly. So now we're going to look at engaging. And we're going to look at the basics. Just showing now a plan, if you like. There's a name for this kind of graph. I call it a tennis court graph. My wife thinks I'm an idiot, but then she's a woman of taste. But on social media, you're trying to do stuff that appears on the left-hand side. You're trying to engage people with entertaining and educational content, of which there are some examples on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side is the stuff that's really about what you would do on your website. The sort of content that persuades and converts them into clients. So you really want to be thinking about press releases, you want to be thinking about articles, and you want to be thinking about branded videos and quizzes. They're the sort of stuff that people share on social media, but they don't turn people into clients. When people follow the link back from social media to your website, that's where you want to be talking to them about a free trial right now and a sign up now for 7 days at a discounted rate, those kinds of things. That happens on your website. You talk about more shareable stuff on social media so that you get a share of that voice. Thinking about what really works on social media, and we see it time and again, is understand that thumbs are your enemy. Everybody uses social media like that. Not everybody, but most people are using it on their phones. So thumbs are your enemy, and you've got to stop people thumbing through the content on their phone. So what you need is something, and apologies to Mr. Winstone, something sexy, disgusting, or funny. And this kind of ticks all three of those things, because that will stop the scroll. That gets the attention, and then you can begin to share your message perhaps underneath that. You also want to be helpful. So if anybody has a problem, whether or not it's connected with a product or service you sell, you should be trying to fix it, and we'll show you an example of that shortly. And then finally, think about timing. When are your audience online? Because if you're tweeting between the hours of 9 and 5, because that's when you're in the office, or you're Facebooking between the hours of 9 and 5, Monday to Friday, because that's when you're in the office, you should have a look at when your audience is online, because even if they're a business audience, they're probably online between 7 and 9 and 6 and 11 at night, and they're online on Saturdays and Sundays. Most of us use the internet at the weekends. So if you're only tweeting between 9 and 5 on a weekday, you're missing out that huge potential audience. There are some tools that will allow you to schedule this sort of stuff. We really like Buffer app, which will allow you to schedule stuff for when your audience is online. To see when your audience is online, we really like a tool called Birdsong Analytics, which will enable you to see when your audience is online. It'll also enable you to see when your competitors' audiences are online. So that's looking at what sort of content is engaging and what sort of timing you should be using. Let's look at Facebook. Here's an example of some posts from probably 12, 24 months ago, where a couple of brands have put something up on Facebook. It's mainly text-based. Maybe it's pulled over, they've put a link in their status, and it's pulled over a little image from their status. It's got no engagement in terms of people liking, commenting, or sharing. So for Facebook, that's no good. Mark Zuckerberg wants you to come onto Facebook and like and share and comment on stuff and engage with it, because the more you do that, the more time you're going to spend on Facebook, and the more adverts he can sell you down the right-hand side, and the more enormous yachts he can buy. This sort of content does not work for Mark Zuckerberg, and therefore effectively it's penalised, it's pushed down, it's not going to show in the news feeds of your potential customers. What will show is stuff like photos and videos. You see it all the time from your friends and family. Photos and videos is what gets engagement. And here you can see those two brands doing something that's a lot more engaging, nice photos, a lot more personable, and you can see at the bottom of those things, statuses, you can see that there's lots of shares, lots of likes, lots of comments. That's really, really good to know, because if your competitors are only putting up text updates, you can put up photo updates and start to win the battle. Again, think on Facebook, timing and mobile. And this is where thinking about your content calendar is really useful. Here's a really good example from Truffle Shuffle, which is another Southwest-based firm. What they're doing there is they're using the new Doctor Who episode, Mummy on the Orient Express, as a reason to talk about a t-shirt that they've got with a TARDIS on it. And just by putting that up, just in time for Doctor Who, as we're all waiting, we're looking at our phones, we're second screening, you can see that they've got nearly 100 likes on this one image alone. That's really, really good. Tying your brand with something that's already got masses of PR is a really useful way to go. And then think about comments and likes to win stuff. So putting up an image, like and comment to win is a really useful way to go on that, because it gets lots and lots of shares very, very quickly. Now, you have to then engage those people after they've liked and commented to share. Otherwise, you have a big spike in your likes and comments, but actually it's of no real business value. So think about what you're going to do after that like and comment to win. But it's a nice minimal barrier to entry, just a like or a comment. Make sure you do get a comment though, because as a brand, you can't respond to someone who's just liked it to win. So if you pick a winner and all they did was like the photo, you can't let them know that they've won unless they've commented. If they've commented, you can reply. So, having a bit more of a look at our friends at Truffle Shuffle, this is a look at the last year or two of their posts on Facebook, and you can see that the vast majority of the posts on Facebook are photos. They hardly do any text-based links. It's nearly 60% photos, some videos creeping in as the audience becomes more used to seeing those. And on the next graph, you can see that the number of likes for their statuses. Photos has loads of likes and quite a few comments. But you can see also that videos has quite a lot of comments also. In fact, it has more comments on videos than on photos. So increasingly, they'll want to use videos in their updates. When you're showing your boss the results on this stuff, make sure you go into Facebook Insights. So you've got the page. If you click on the Manage This page, you can see Facebook Insights, because it's not always as it seems. You can see on our post here where we were featured in the magnificent newspaper, the Bristol Post. You should buy it regularly. I'd subscribe. When we were featured in that magnificent organ, you can see that we put up we shared the link. It pulled across the image from the website, put that live on our Facebook page, and you could see that there's me, Willow and Josh in all of our glory. You can see below that it got 9 likes and 1 comment. That's from people who like Noisy Little Monkey, the page on Facebook. When we drill down into our insights, you can see that actually it got 43 likes because Willow shared it with her family, Josh shared it with his family, I shared it with mine, and all of our mums and all of our aunties, who are all on Facebook, all like that image. But because not all of them like Noisy Little Monkey, it doesn't show up in the headline figure just at the bottom when you look at your newsfeed as a brand. So always go into Insights so that you can see how much did this really get shared with a wider audience. It's not quite viral because it's only tens of likes, but it is showing you how it extends. So, Facebook then. Keep your messages short and sweet. You don't need to write a novel to introduce your blog post. You just need to write a headline. Use pictures and video for engagement. Ask people to do something. Share this if you love, comment if you like, and maybe even ask them a yes or a no answer. Like if you love this kind of stuff. Make it personal. So talk to people in the first person. And remember, it's not all about followers. If you've got 20,000 followers, but only 2 of them ever engage with your content, that's not as good as having 200 followers, 10 to 20 of whom engage with your content. It's much more likely to get shared with a huge audience in that latter example, because that first example is just you and your mum liking all the stuff you put out for your brand. So let's move on to Twitter. Twitter is a much more succinct medium. We try and aim for less than 100 characters if you want to produce your own stuff that you want to get shared, because that gives people the opportunity to comment on your tweet when they're retweeting it. Much more likely to get shared if you do that. The biggest tip we can say on Twitter, and my creative director is going to love me for this because she's always on about pictures, is use pictures. And here you can see the Bath Chronicle. On the left, we've got a fantastic example, a picture of a gentleman in the news, and it's going to attract the click because you want to know what's going on in his case. So you're going to click that if you're on Twitter. It's going to stop the scroll. Picture on the right is a picture where it's not been resized for Twitter, and this is a really useful example. Twitter will always try and grab the middle of any picture. So if you've got a portrait shot of people all standing in a row, you will only see crotches and boobs. Not good. So make sure you crop your photos to a landscape aspect ratio. More about pictures. You can now, certainly from the phone app and possibly from the desktop app, I haven't tried it, you can upload multiple photos with one tweet. So you can upload a gallery, and actually it's really nice to tag people, other accounts in tweets, so at and then their name, so maybe at Bristol Post if you're tagging this newspaper. And rather than writing that and using up precious characters in the status, you can actually tag them when you upload a photo gallery. So when you're uploading more than one photo to Twitter, tag the people in it and you'll more than likely get engagement from that account. And don't forget, if you are putting up stuff around events, to use the hashtag for the event. And we can see Slapstick, which is a local festival to Bristol, Silent Comedy Festival. They are using the hashtag Slapstick 2015 for their event in 2015. We've mentioned Bristol Post in the tweet, so we're getting engagement, hopefully from Bristol Post, because we're saying what a great article they've written about Griff Rhys-Jones. And hopefully they'll say hi, thanks for tweeting and stuff like that, but also anybody who's following that hashtag to see what's going on with Slapstick will more than likely see that content. What we would say is be sparing with atting people in tweets. You know, don't at them unless it's authentic and meaningful, and be sparing with hashtags. If you fill up your Twitter stream with hashtags, ain't no one going to listen to it. It's just noise. So thinking about those influencers of your audience. So we had our personas up earlier that we'd thought about. These are the right sort of people, they're representative of the audience of the brand we're tweeting for or we're Facebooking for. How can we engage with the people who influence them? So what you can see here is 3 screenshots of different searches for the word blogger on Twitter. So the one on the far left is searches that we've done just using the native Twitter app, really quick and dirty. Type blogger into Twitter and this searches everybody's bio or everybody's Twitter name for the word blogger, and you can narrow that by city, so you can reach out to bloggers in your city who might want to share your message. The next one along is from a tool called Just Unfollow. And again, all the tools I'm mentioning in here, pretty much all will give you a free trial or be free for a limited number of uses. So I'm not trying to make you buy anything. So the middle channel is from Just Unfollow, and we've typed blogger into there, and not only does it search Twitter bios and names, it also searches their most recent tweets. So if they seem to be tweeting about that subject, it means we can look at engaging with them. And then the final one is from a company called Moz. It's called Follow a Wonk, and it allows you to compare multiple accounts, who they follow, who follows them, and see where's the commonality between. So you could look up 3 competitors. So if you're a local hairdresser, you could look up 3 of your competitors, who follows them on Twitter, and then who should you be trying to engage with? Because the people who follow all 3 of your competitors in the local area are really interested in hairdressers locally. So you really need to be engaging with them because they are looking for people like you. It enables you to be able to chop and change and look around and see who should I be engaging with on Twitter. Start off with the Twitter native app, and then if you find that actually you need to localize the results a bit more cleverly, then look at using Just Unfollow or something like Follow a Wonk, which will enable you to download that as Excel spreadsheets, and you can begin to follow them, see what they're talking about, and see, have you got anything that will help that conversation along? Have you got any interesting tidbits from the industry so that they can see you as someone who's useful to know? The other thing that Twitter is really useful for is customer service. What we like to do, this is using a tool called Hootsuite, is we can monitor, and again, free tool, you can monitor mentions of your brand. So you can monitor anytime someone mentions your brand without using the @ So in the case of Bath Chronicle, if someone mentioned the words Bath Chronicle as a phrase, it wouldn't necessarily blip the radar of the Twitter account normally unless they use the Twitter handle @BathChron. So if I'm talking about the Bath Chronicle but I don't mention them, Hootsuite enables me to search for the phrase in inverted commas, and I can search for Bath Chronicle and see how many times people mention Bath Chronicle. And in the example we're showing you people who used the word job interview and then sad face in Milton Keynes in about the year 2011, so that we're not getting anybody into trouble. So we were working with a recruitment agency and we showed them how to target and localise the search for that phrase and the sentiment with a sad face, so that if someone was had a bad job interview or was nervous about their job interview, this recruiter could tweet out to them and say, good luck, and here's our top 10 tips to feel confident in an interview, or here's our top 5 tips to write a good CV. So it's reaching out. They're not necessarily saying, we'll find you a better job. They're showing them ways to do things better in their real life. And that makes a huge difference from a brand awareness and a brand loyalty point of view. It's also really useful for fixing people's problems. So where people are complaining, you can fix those problems and you can fix them in the public domain so other people can see you fix a problem. And often we've talked to clients where they've said, actually, when we're fixing problems, other people join in and see the fix and say, thank you for the fix. I was having that problem too. I'm definitely going to buy now. It's really, really useful way to do it. I'd urge you to go and look up, for a way that this has worked on Facebook, is look up the Sainsbury's giraffe bread, tiger bread incident, where someone from Sainsbury's replied in a really nice way on Facebook to a little girl who said that they'd named their bread wrong, and it got them thousands and thousands of likes and lots of interest. Finally, in this Twitter section, again, we're back to our friends who are champions of social media in the Southwest, Truffle Shuffle, and they have got a really a good retweet of someone else saying, I need this beanie. They've taken a photo of the Bad Hair Day beanie. Truffle Shuffle have seen that they've said that and they've retweeted it. It gives them a bit of kudos with Outfits Heaven, who are a fashion blogger. I assume, I don't know, I'm not very fashionable, as you can see. But as you can see here, it's got 5 retweets and 2 favourites, so it's got them some traction in their market. Moving on to how you measure what works, Twitter Analytics is something that you can sign up for. You used to have to pay for adverts to do it, but now you can just sign up for Twitter Analytics right there in the Twitter desktop app. And what we would say is look at trends. Over time, what are the tweets that work and what are the tweets that seem to fall a bit flat? What gets you a spike in likes and tweets and follows and what doesn't? And then have a look at them and is it that you're using photos badly? Is it that you're tweeting at the wrong time of day? Don't look at just the spikes and the troughs. Have a look at the trends, see what works best, and then try and make some decisions about how you can do it better going forward. And for Twitter tips, we're looking at having a clear call to action. So click here, share this, retweet to win. We're looking at using use urgency. So share this now. You must click here today. Those kinds of things. Add urgency, because Twitter is doing that down your user's phone. You need to catch their eye and you need to make them click to your website quickly and easily. Use pictures and resize your images so that they fit the tweets nicely. Comment, don't just retweet. So if you're retweeting something that you agree with, say that you agree with it. When you're retweeting it, it shows the brand personality a lot more. Or if you're retweeting something that you disagree with it, say that you disagree with it. And share your message more than once. If you want to drive traffic back to your website, think about writing, whereas you're writing a blog post, let's say, that you know you're going to tweet out later, think of the 6 or 7 different headlines you thought might attach to this blog post. Save them all, and then you can use them as tweets to direct traffic back to that same blog post. So the sentiment is all the same, it's all about right, but actually you can tweet that blog post out 6, 7, 8, 9 times. Really, really useful. The life of a tweet is very, very short, and therefore if you can share something useful and timely several times in 24 hours, you're much more likely to get traffic back to your website from Twitter, which is what it's all about, right? So, the next thing we're looking at is Pinterest. Pinterest kind of seemed to start out as a place for American ladies to plan their weddings. Now, as you can see, it is simply a place where everybody posts pictures of their cats in different outfits. Actually, it's more than that. If you think of a mood board or a scrapbook, it's a way of saying these are the sorts of things that this is how I want to decorate my extension. This is the sort of hairdos I want my bridesmaids to have. These are some interesting recipes for chicken soup. Think of a notice board and how you'd pin all that stuff up, and think of when you're decorating a room, the sort of colour charts that you pin to the wall and where you paint stuff on the wall. That's what Pinterest is about. It's about helping people who are looking for inspiration in a particular channel. They'll type something into Pinterest and they'll come across a board or they'll come across a pin that describes that. So maybe it's and you can see I know all about hair. It's a second referral to hairdressers. This is getting a bit weird, I apologise. Braided updo. That's something that's big on Pinterest. So I search for braided updo, I see lots of pictures of braided updo, and I can start to repin on my boards the ones that I want my bridesmaids to have at my wedding. And it's got too weird, so we're going to move on to the next slide, which is really useful because it's statistics, and I'm much more happy with that than braided updos. 70% of clicks, according to Picora, who are an analytics tool for Pinterest, 70% of clicks will happen within the first 2 days, which is great. That means 30% of the clicks to your website are happening forever after. With Facebook and Twitter, it's much, much more by the second. It's going to happen or it's not. With Pinterest, it's really, really good. You can get that traffic coming back to your, or coming to your website for months, if not years in advance. And we're coming up to Halloween. You're going to miss the boat for Halloween this year, but if you really want to put up some useful stuff about ways to decorate a room for a Halloween party, interesting cocktails for a Halloween party, useful outfits for a Halloween, for kids at Halloween, interesting trick-or-treat recipes, if you had all of those, you're probably not going to get a great deal on Pinterest right now if you're new to it. But next year, you're much more likely to get found. So that evergreen content that can stay on Pinterest will drive traffic to your website for a long term. Thinking about what works, well, of course images work because it's all image-based. But what you've got to think about is that if you are perhaps, in this case, a jeweller, you're looking at something on a white background that looks like it's shot really, really catalogue-y in a studio, or something that looks like it's in situ. Actually, people click stuff that's got more dominant colours in it. One dominant colour does not get many repins versus something with lots of dominant colours, because it's much more eye-grabbing as you're scrolling through Pinterest. The other thing to note is that stuff that is less than 10% background, you can see on the sunglasses, lots and lots of background. You can see on the picture of the sofa, actually, it's a really nice image. That's likely to receive 2 to 4 times more repins on other people's boards. So if you're sharing it from your website and putting it on Pinterest, that will get you much, much more visibility because loads more people will repin it versus what is quite a boring image. One I find quite interesting, and I'm falling to the realms of psychology here, is people like stuff, or seem to like stuff on Pinterest that doesn't have a face. So the image on the left would likely get 23% more repins than the image on the right, which has got a face. Now, I think it's possibly because people can see themselves in that situation. It's easier to picture yourself cutting that cheese than picture yourself in that dress because there's a striking model wearing that dress. So I think it's something to do with that, but I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just trying to interpret the numbers a little bit. Looking at how you organise your board, as I say, when people begin on Pinterest, they type in a word search often, so they'll search for a phrase. So the way you describe your company is crucial. And a bit like the Twitter bio, you've got a limited number of characters, so make sure that you use descriptive words in your Pinterest board that describe your company and what your boards are about. The next chunk down, you're looking at a verified website. So there's a little bit of code you can ask your web developer to slap into the header of your website. It's not visible to the likes of you or I, but it's visible to Pinterest, and it says, so this particular board is tied to that particular website. So it's a verified brand on Pinterest. And then think about using boards which have good names. They're going to attract the click. So we're looking at here a board that says Food, Glorious Food, which is a great name for a board, much better than our favourite dishes or dishes on our menu. So Food, Glorious Food has a much more emotional impact with the viewer, so they're much more likely to click and examine that board and repin stuff from there. Looking at some more interestingly named boards, For geography geeks, because if you're a geek, if you're into geography, you might use that sort of terminology rather than pictures of maps. Badass machines, that's really a good board. It is from GE. You'd think a really, really boring company, but they've got some interesting machines which can do lots of destruction. And then finally, there's a couple underneath there. I'll leave you to read them. Only click them if you think that you're not going to be too offended by their content. They're not too offensive. Back to your boards. Make sure you use the big image on those boards is called a cover image. Make sure you use a really nice eye-grabbing cover image. That one's really good. It's a picture of a pig. It kind of draws the eye in. A personal pet hate of Tash, our creative director at Noisy Monkey, is half-finished boards. If you can't find 5 photos to put on a Pinterest board, don't put the board up. So that's a bit of a pain, isn't it? You want to put stuff up, but you don't want to leave a half-empty board. Brilliant. There are secret boards. So put up secret boards, and you can use that as a place to get started. And you can put up all of your boards, and until they've got 5 to 10 images on, they stay secret, and then you launch them so that they become in the public eye. The other thing you can use them for is, again, we were redesigning our office, so we got everybody to, you can have multiple users pinned to one secret board. So we were redesigning our office, and we had everybody pin ideas about the office design. Or we were also using it for a rebranding exercise with a theatre company, and so we were using that to think about what does the brand need to look like before we got on to what's the logo say, what's the strapline. We were just thinking, what's it need to look like? A secret board is fantastic for that. We're looking at an individual pin here, and it's one that we've written so that or it's an example of one that's been written, that is, we think, a really good example. So the board it's going on to is hashtag party like it's 1999. Brilliant. There's a hashtag in there for the word party. Only one, you notice. We're not smashing hashtags all over it. It's just one hashtag, but it's a useful one. The board name is quite cool. It's going to interest people who are on Pinterest. And then we've got the description of what the picture is, which is a really nicely taken picture. Love this quick cocktail recipe, a blueberry gin fizz, perfect for summer parties and get-togethers. Love, fizz, perfect, are all sorts of words that pop and crack. It's not a dull, boring description. It's something that's got some zip and pep to it. And that's what you want when you're describing an image. You want it to be engaging for the user. Underneath that, we've got source. The source is, where's it come from? If you're pinning it from your website, we would urge you to use a tracking code that goes on the back of that, and I'll show you how to do that later. Don't use a shortened link. You see them everywhere. You see them as bit.ly, buffly, owly, lots of shortened links all over the internet. Don't use them on Pinterest because it will scrape out your tracking code, and you'll see visitors coming to your website in Google Analytics, but you won't be able to track them from Pinterest, and therefore can't see the ROI, return on investment, that you might be getting on there. So the next thing is, while you've got your web developer putting in that bit of code for your Pinterest verification, actually see if you can get him or her to add in a little bit of extra code that's called rich pins, which means that if I, as a user of Pinterest, come to your website, I can pin something directly from your website onto one of my boards, and it will pull the description as you've written it onto my board, and the link from your website correctly over to Pinterest, so that when other people repin it, it's still got your description, and so when other people click that image, it arrives at your website. Really, really useful to do. If you've got the bonnet open on the website, something that's it's almost a no-brainer to do. Get that done. It's simpler than your web designer will claim it is. Sorry, web designers. Thinking about Pinterest, it's an image website, so yours have got to be attractive and engaging. Write optimized descriptions for those pins. So think about you describing what's in the image and you having some zip and pep to your description. Think about trends. So think about Halloween, think about Spring Fashion Week, think about Bath Fashion Week. Can you get a board up in a week or two before those so you can start to promote that board via Twitter, via Facebook, and all of that other kind of stuff? Don't simply pin your own stuff. This is about your brand displaying its personality. Pin other stuff that makes sense to have alongside you. So maybe images from other brands that you trust, images that you just find on Pinterest that speak to you and you think will speak to your potential clients. Use secret boards to populate before they go live, so you don't go live with any empty boards, and tell your story. There's a really good example of an insurance company in America that's on Pinterest. Dull as dishwater. They're selling insurance. It's also hugely competitive. They're not going to win on Google very easily because it's one of the most competitive environments. So how do they drive traffic? Well, actually, they've put up really, really interesting things, boards about stuff you can plant in your new garden, how to find a reputable plumber in a new city, stuff like that. These are all of the interesting Pinterest boards that they've put up, which is really useful when I'm moving house, when I'm probably thinking I need to get a new insurance quote. The other thing they've got is the people in the business. They do pet insurance, and they've got the people in the business who keep their pets photoed on Pinterest. If you've got a dog or a cat on Pinterest, you're probably going to win. And that's a really good way to tell the story, give the personalities of the people who work in the brand. So the final one we're going to come to, and it is the final one because it's an absolute dog, is Google+. Hopefully the gods of Google won't kill me for saying that, but it is dire. Google+ is that one that we said, if you're doing everything else or you're doing one of the other channels, make sure you share the content on Google+ as well. Tweak it slightly and put it on Google+ because it helps you own the page when people search for your brand. So when they search for your company on Google, your Google+ posts will show up in the right-hand side. So someone who does it really well is a solicitor in the Southwest called Porter Dodson, a regional solicitor with 5 or 6 offices. And what you can see here is they've got one main Google+ page where they share all of their news and stories that they put on their blog. They just automatically share it on Google+ because they know it helps them dominate the branded search. And then down on the right hand side you can see that I've put up all of their examples of all of their other Google+ pages, and those are the ones that are for each regional office. It's tied to the Google Maps or Google My Business, you might have seen this called recently, or Google Local if you were looking at it 6 months ago. This means that when you search for solicitors in Yeovil, let's say, you're much more likely to see Porter Dodson show up in the maps, you're much more likely to see them show up in the organic listings. And these pages have had, in the last 3 or 4 months, way over 100,000 views in visits from Google. And you can see here, there's a quick image. This isn't simply branded search they're getting here. This is someone searching for solicitors in Yeovil. Try this at home. You'll see that, or at the office, do it wherever you like. You'll see that Porter Dodson will be probably position 1, 2 or 3 in the maps and in the organic listings. There's always someone advertising above it because solicitors want to win new business as well. If only they could think of an imaginative way to drive new traffic to their website, perhaps through social media with a local media partner. Who does Google+ really well? I mentioned it was a dog, right? Very few people. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence is a good example of a very, very active Google+ page, which tells you something about the sort of stuff that works on Google+. It's geeks mainly. So you're not going to get millions and millions of visitors from Google+, but it will help you own search traffic. So how do you make it work? You verify your location. You go to Google My Business or Google Maps and you say, send me a postcard, I own this business. It sends you a postcard, you ring up the number, you verify your business with Google. You verify your website, little bit of code, while your web developer's got the bonnet up to do the Pinterest code, send them this Google Plus code as well, and it says to Google Plus, this company is a publisher of content on this Google Plus page. Hooray. If you're posting anywhere else, recycle, repurpose that for Google+. Don't just copy and paste it from Facebook. Change it slightly because it's a slightly different audience if they are on Google+ who are going to find you there. Most importantly, for local businesses, get reviews. If people are coming into your... We've worked with a barber in Aberdeen, and he has a laptop on the way out, and he says, if you've got a Gmail address and you want a lollipop, please leave me a review for your haircut on the way out and I'll give you a lollipop. He's had his laptop stolen twice off of the counter, but it's worth it to him because he's got hundreds of reviews for his barbershop. Get the reviews while it's fresh in people's minds. Have an iPad if you're in a shop that you can ask them for a review on, and those stars will show up in Google search. And that's really, really useful. They're probably, if you've seen it from TripAdvisor, Trustpilot, reviews.co.uk, this is Google's own version. Now, it might be dead in 12 months, and you might say, what a waste of time, John. I wish I hadn't bothered. It might be that Google pours 40, 50 billion into making it the most successful thing on the internet, and you say, thanks, John, I owe you a drink. Remember that. Finally, how do we engage more across all of these channels? Well, what you've got to remember is one does not simply spawn a community. You can't just do cool stuff on social media and develop a social media community. This is a really good example of someone who's doing social media well. What they've done is sent me a t-shirt. So you can see in the top there, I paid for that t-shirt. The rest of the stuff makes me want to interact with this business. It's a proper job, handwritten label, and it's on a Moomin. It's on a Moomin because they know that from their analysis of their potential clients, most of them are 30 to 45-year-old people like me. I'll recognise a Moomin, and I love some handwriting. You can also see they've put in some free postcards because their designers of their t-shirts are also artists. They've put a hand-tied ribbon around the note that tells me how to take care of my t-shirt. Now, I think the printing on the note is one of those handwriting fonts, but I'm prepared to forgive that because they've handwritten the label. And then they've put in a card with social nudges for me to follow them on Facebook, on Twitter, and all of that kind of stuff. That's brilliant. Liz Earle, who's not a Southwest brand as far as I'm aware, she's in the Isle of Wight, I think. They do this really well. Every time you buy something from Liz Earle, they put in a little extra. And it just makes you want to take a photo of it and go, thanks ever so much, Liz Earle, and put it on Facebook. They know their market. If you're doing anything like that, if you can do stuff extra in real life, that's really, really useful for social. And here we can see, and this is why I love Truffle Shuffle as an example, I bought a t-shirt off of these guys, I opened it up, and on top of the t-shirt was some love hearts and some refreshers. Awesome stuff. And this is before I knew I was going to talk about them. I tweeted them a photo to say thanks ever so much. And actually, I want them to sell more t-shirts because they treated me so well. So think about what can you do in real life that spawns a community. You're probably already doing it. It's not solely the run up Snowdon and the Bristol Half Marathon and all of that kind of stuff that everybody's doing, but what are the charitable things you're doing in the organisation? Where is it you go the extra mile right now for your clients? Actually, how can you display that? How can you make that a bit more likely to get shared socially? Sweets and all of that kind of stuff in with packages that you send out, bunches of flowers to clients that have been clients for years and years and years, really, really useful. To get more engagement, because it's not solely about selling stuff, it's about getting your content shared. We keep coming back to your web developer, and he or she is probably going to get a bit annoyed with me now, because I'm going to say, while they've got the bonnet up, have a look at this Moz blog. Moz is a community of people who do online marketing in Seattle somewhere. There's a blog there that shows you how to add special chunks of data to each page on your website, and that can be done kind of automatically if you can get your web designer in line. And it means that when you share stuff on Facebook, it brings across a big photo, not a small photo. When you share stuff on Twitter, it brings across a big photo, not just the link. Really, really useful to get that applied. It's quite involved, it's quite difficult in terms of understanding how it works, but have a look at that blog and then see about talking to your web developer or web development team to get them to start implementing that on your website. Convert followers into customers. How do we do that? Well, it's hard to do and it's hard to measure. But the fact that both of those things are hard doesn't mean they shouldn't be done. It means we should try and outrun the competition, because it's so hard the competition probably aren't bothering. So let's get back to that table. When we're on social media, we're entertaining and educating people. When we're getting them onto our website, that's when we're converting them to customers, not over there on social media. So we need to get them to your website to convert. And that's where we start doing the free trials, the download a voucher, print out a voucher and bring it to the showroom. So again, one of the ways that we would think about doing that is begin the engagement on social media. So we come back to that example of the recruitment company who are outreaching to people who are using particular phrases. If you're a local shop that sells televisions, you could do TV broken sad face as a search on Twitter using the free Hootsuite tool, geocode that, so locate that around within 10 miles of Bristol, and every time someone says they've got a broken TV, you could reach out to them and say, well, bring it in and we'll give you £20 off a new one. That would be really, really nice way to reach out to them. Just be gentle with it. Don't push too hard. We want to think about, once we are entertaining and engaging and doing that little bit of outreach, people use phones for social. They're using phones and tablets. So the table here is from Millward Brown, who did some global research in 2014, so this is fairly recent data in our world, and we can see that if you look at how often people are using, or how many minutes people are using a smartphone and a tablet for every day, we are way outweighing their use of television and laptop computers. So if people are using social and tablet, your website needs to be responsive. Another Southwest business, Destination Skin, they run or they have a number of beauty spas, I believe we call them, around and about the place. If you want a responsive website, WordPress is really, really good for this. One of the few trustworthy free platforms that we love on the internet, and it's WordPress. If you add Yoast SEO, which is a plugin, Y-O-A-S-T, and then SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, you'll get a lot of extra useful tools for that for free, but you can get responsive sites really, really easily. And you can, responsive means you don't need two websites, you have one website that responds to most of the devices. Nothing will work perfectly on everything, but at the moment, if your site only works on a big screen, you're going to fail. So, if we're driving traffic from social, get a responsive site, and then sort out your calls to action. So many people say, well, I don't convert anybody I drive from social media, and then you arrive at their website and there's no calls to action. This is this is John Lewis. They're obviously brilliant at selling stuff. They also use social media very effectively. When they're driving people to this page for this Canon camera, you can see that there's a big picture of a camera, there's some stars at the top giving me those trust signifiers, not necessarily a call to action, but people like it because it's got 5 stars. And then, in contrasting colours to everything else on the page, is the big green add something to basket button. Add bundle to basket because it's a bundle of camera and items. It doesn't say submit, doesn't say buy, it doesn't say one word, it says add bundle to basket. It makes me think there's a whole action going on there. Don't use submit, don't use send, use phrases. Make them look like a button, make them in contrasting colours, and you can see underneath that, the secondary action probably they want me to take, if I'm not going to buy it now, is they want me to share this on Google+, Twitter, Pinterest, or Facebook. The social icons are under there. And we always see that as a useful secondary action. If you're not going to buy it or engage any more with it, is it a page that's worth sharing? Those are contrasting colours to the rest of the website, which means I'm much more likely to use them. And actually, a really good way to test that is squint. Screw up your eyes, look at your website. Can you still see the actions you want people to take when they arrive there? If you can't, you need to change the design. We're driving people to the website. We know that we've got good calls to action. Now we need to monitor, measure, and improve. 3 tools for that, 3 free tools. One is Hootsuite, it's an owl because it hoots. One is Buffer App, and one is Professor Traffic. All of these will shorten links for your website. They're all free. They will shorten links that you can share on Facebook and Twitter, so it saves you those precious characters. But they'll also add that tracking code. Remember on Pinterest we saw the tracking code in the source? That means that when you come to Google Analytics, with no mess or fuss or setup, you can click on referrers or campaigns, and you can see here that the most visitors to this website have come from a campaign called social. People sharing stuff on social media, because we've tracked the link, and it's really simple to do. You just share with Hootsuite, Buffer, or Professor Traffic, and all of these things will be tracked. Google claims to track that social traffic via analytics, but a lot of it gets lost and stripped out. So make sure you track the links. You can go one step further on that. You can see how do people convert. So this is an example of a transactional website. It's selling stuff online, and you can see that most of their traffic that converts into orders is coming from direct. So they're coming from a favourites bar or something like that. Some of it is coming from adverts like paid search, some of it is coming from organic, some of it is coming from referral, and some of it is coming from social networking. And then at the bottom you've got display advertising and email. Now, the amount of effort they're putting into these things is probably proportional to the amount of return they're getting on that investment. Social networking is never normally about driving hard and fast e-commerce numbers. If you want to do that, then the simplest and quickest way to do that is on paid search. But social media is about getting those people on the hook and making them search for you next time on Google or Bing because they've heard that you give a great service or you reached out to them really well when they had a problem. So that's how we measure social media using Google Analytics. Again, it's free, so it's a tool that we would suggest you use. So how much can I do myself? Well, we always say, if you're limited on time, do one thing well. Either make bread or make shoes. Don't try and combine the two and make terrible bread shoes. So concentrate on one thing and doing it really well. So if you're a consumer brand and you're selling to the man on the street, the lady on the street, then think probably Facebook is the place where you want to spend most of your time if you've got limited amount of time, and potentially Pinterest because there's a long return on that. If you are more business to business, then Twitter seems to work better anecdotally. It feels like there's more white collar activity on Twitter. And again, if you've got a bit of extra time, a bit on Pinterest. On both of them, recycle and repurpose that content for Google+. Can you make the time? And that's the big question. When we say do one thing well, we mean do it well. This is public-facing stuff. This is your brand online. This has got the biggest audience you're likely to get. So can you make the time? You must make the time if you're going to do it well, or you must outsource it to a good agency. So we think that one article a week is probably pretty good for a small business, a small team of marketers. And one update per day on each of your chosen channels. If you've chosen Twitter, that probably needs to be 3 or 4 updates per day. And quality work of that scope takes about a day a week to do well. So can you make that time, or do you need to consider outsourcing it? That's a decision only you can make. So that's it. If you've got any questions about using social media for your business, you can tweet me at Mr. John Payne, or get in touch with the Bristol Post, the Bath Chronicle, the Gloucestershire Echo, or the Gloucester Citizen, and someone there will be able to help. Thanks very much.